Well, welcome, Duke alumni and friends, to this session of the Forever Learning Institute. I'm Tish Futrell, the Director of Academic Engagement on the Lifelong Learning team, and we're nested under Alumni Engagement and Development. I'm glad that you're here with us today for Embodying Self Through Creativity. This is the fourth session in our Sense of Self series, and this session explores how creativity helps reveal self-awareness and enables us to understand and showcase our true
Well, I
selves.
guess I better go out and come back in.
We will have time for Q&A at the end, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat as you think of them. You will be asked to complete a brief survey at the end of the session because your input matters. To moderate our program today, we're joined by my colleague, Kent Wicker. Since 2014, Kent has served as the Assistant Director of Duke's Graduate Liberal Studies program, where he advises students, serves on master's committees, and teaches graduate students regularly. His academic interests include American and post-colonial fiction, satire, the novel, and narrative theory. He is especially interested in multidisciplinary approaches to embodiment and to the lived experience of place. Welcome, Kent, to the Forever Learning Institute.
Thank you, Letitia. I'm very happy to be a part of this series. It is inspired by the core course that I teach for the Graduate Liberal Studies program, which offers a self-designed interdisciplinary master's degree. This program brings together both full-time and part-time students of all ages, nationalities, and backgrounds. The core course, entitled The Self and the World, is designed to engage with issues of self, other, culture, and identity from the perspective of multiple disciplines. So we have tried to amplify those concerns in this series. This fourth session of the series focuses on creativity and self-expression. To help us learn more about those things, we have with us three people who both study and practice the arts. And so I'm going to introduce each, and as I introduce them, each will have a chance to talk about what they do. So first, we have Noor Tasnim. He is a PhD student in the graduate program in translational biology, medicine, and health at Virginia Tech, who graduated from Duke University in 2018. Welcome, Noor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here, and nice to see everyone from all across, from all over the place, really. So it's been amazing to be engaged with dance, honestly, since the time I was at Duke. And so I was at Duke from 2014 to 2018, and I initially got started with dance during my undergraduate degree. So I was involved with a group called Street Medicine, which is still very active within the Duke community today, and they are inspired by different street dance styles. And so while engaging in street dance, I did become more of a street dance practitioner, specifically focusing on popping and animation. And so when you think about popping, it's usually a house within the hip hop umbrella, but it typically involves a lot of different muscle contractions and releases, contract and release. And there are a lot of different styles that are kind of under that popping umbrella as well. And so animation is one of them. And so if you think about the Dynamation film, the stop motion films that were prominent around like the 1980s or 70s, it's when you kind of just go like tick, 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 tick. That's one of my specialties, as well as isolation movements as well. And so that's when you are just primarily just moving one part of your body while the rest of your body stays still. And so I'll talk and show you all a little bit more about what that dance practice looks like. In addition to that, I've done most of my training within the Durham, Raleigh, the Triangle area. The Durham street dance scene is very active, and I've been an active member of that community. And so the video that I'm about to show you is a lesson that I taught with my wife back in that area. And as a fun fact too, I also met my wife through dance within the Triangle area as well. So you can see where it's really deeply rooted into my identity. So let me share this video. And I'll just keep it on mute just so you all can watch it as I play it. Great. All right, great. And so you can see that when I do practice dance, usually a lot of my dance forms, in addition to popping and animation and isolation techniques, as you can see right there, typically involve a lot of different hip hop grooves or a lot of social dances, right? You can kind of see them right here with the dynamic foot movements, arm movements, but you'll see at times too, like with waving right here, pop, 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 pop. There are a lot of combinations that come into play with dance. And so, as being a dancer myself and being involved in the street dance scene within North Carolina, I was very grateful for the community that it kind of helped me develop while I was a young adult within the area. And so that video is done. I'll share that or stop sharing that. But when it comes to developing community, that's something that I was very grateful for when it came to dance. And so from 2020 to 2021, I was a loose scholar in East Asia. And bear in mind, that was during the peak of the pandemic. But thankfully, with the way that South Korea, when I was living in Seoul and Tokyo, Japan, were dealing with the pandemic, a lot of the dance studios were still open. And so I heavily relied on those dance studios to develop my sense of community while I was there, whilst continuing to study these street dance styles. I came back to the United States in 2021 to start my PhD in translational biology, medicine, and health over in Virginia Tech in Southwest Virginia. And now my dissertation focuses on the different physiological, behavioral, and neural effects of dance. And so again, you can kind of see like how I've tied in these personal impacts that dance has had for me. And now I'm looking at that not only from a psychological and behavioral level, but I'm also looking at that in a neural and brain physiology level too. And so I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that today during today's moderated discussion.
Thank you, Noor. Very interesting. Next, we also have Mike Wiley. He is the Stephen and Janet Baer Assistant Research Professor of Arts, Ethics, and Education, and he's a North Carolina-based actor, playwright, and director of multiple one-man documentary dramas. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Kent, thanks very much for having me. And yeah, I am honored to serve as the Steve and Janet Baer Assistant Research Professor of Arts, Ethics, and Education here. I am also the co-director of the America's Hallowed Ground Project, which is a project that seeks to highlight those sites of struggle around the country, specifically North Carolina and the Southeast, where an incident of racial tension or more has taken place through the lens of art, highlighting those places through the lens of art. I work as an actor and a playwright and a director when I'm not teaching my classes, largely in documentary theater. Some of my works have been The Parchment Hour, or Downrange, Stories from the Home Front, Dahi, the story of Emmett Till, and the stage adaptation of Tim Tyson's book, Blood Done Sign My Name, among a number of others. Most of my work is solo, that is, it's just me, though I have a few ensemble pieces as well. Now, over the past 25 years now, I've had the privilege of working with young people. That is, most of my performances, I perform for ages 12 and up. And I have received the UNC Chapel Hill Distinguished Alumni Award, among a number of other awards. I teach residencies not only at Duke, but other colleges and universities around the country. And my goal, really, as an artist, is to broaden cultural awareness for audiences of all ages by sharing historically grounded stories, especially those highlighting pivotal moments in American history. Through my work, I strive to challenge misconceptions and honor both renowned as well as lesser known figures in the Black American experience. And with that, most of my work is in one costume, a couple of props, and I never leave the stage. And one might ask, well, how does a person do that? How does a single actor do that? And it goes a little something like this. In 1961, I was 21 years old. A few pounds lighter, had all of my hair. John Lewis, 21, student. We took a sit-in movement that was happening on college campuses, out into the populace. We were committed to this idea of the beloved community, the redeemed America. It was an ordeal of conscience. James Farmer, 41, Corps director. Organized by CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, the Freedom Rides would carry people all over the South. The purpose was to break down segregation in the bus stations in the major cities along the way. The plan, however, was simplicity itself. Joan Mulholland, 19, student. In any sane, even half-civilized society, the plan would have been completely innocuous, hardly worth a second thought. CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, would be sending an integrated team of blacks and whites from the nation's capital into every black man's old country, the Jim Crow South. Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, and the M.I. Cricoletta. And on the buses, they would sit randomly in integrated pairs, and in the bus stations, they would use the waiting rooms, casually ignoring the white and colored signs. What could be more harmless than any marginally healthy society? We took a sit-in movement that was happening on college campuses, out into the populace. We were committed to this idea of the beloved community, the redeemed America, and we called ourselves Freedom Riders. And that's just a snippet of the kind of work that I do, trying my best to highlight those stories, but also ask people to walk in the shoes of those very important individuals.
Thank you, Mike. I really enjoyed seeing what you do. Our third speaker today is Sarah Wilbur, who is Associate Professor of the Practice of Dance and Theater Studies, choreographer, and a dancer. Welcome, Sarah.
Wow, thanks, Kent. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Noor. So honored and excited to be with you all in looking at the green dot on my computer, but seeing you all out there. I am a choreographer and a dancer by trade and by training. I have been at Duke for 7 years. As Kent mentioned, I work between theater studies and dance. Why choose? I love performance, and I really do think about embodiment as central to how we know the world, not separate or separate from our mind. Whoever thought of that? Why? Why would we separate them? So I know we're used to hearing people talk about what they do, and I should do that. I should say I am an artist that turned into an academic hopeful about 10 years ago when I realized no one had written the economic history of federal funding for dance in the United States. And I said, wait, hold your horses. How do artists understand the conditions that they work in and they live in? And I got very panicked about that. I got a PhD. I wrote a book on the history of the NEA dance program. And now I run the MFA program here in dance at Duke. And I feel very proud that Duke has seized dance as an area of research and experimentation. It's the only MFA in dance in the Ivy Pluses, and I'm very proud to say I'm involved in that. I fight for artists all the time now, more on the infrastructural side, because I basically believe, that artists like Noor and like Mike make the world better. And part of how they do that is to awaken people to your own innate creativity, your own expressive voice, and of course, your expressive embodiment. So there's a bit of an experiment I'm going to ask of you, and I know it's awkward to come on camera, so if you're not able to do that, no love lost. But I thought since we're doing embodiment today, embodying self, that anyone brave enough to come on camera rather, and bring your hands together. We're going to do a little movement so I can do what I do and stop talking about what I do. Just do it already, right? So for anyone feeling brave to come on, I see some of you are already on video. I've asked the DJ, the stage management, to play a song, and I'm going to dance with you and invite you to dance with me in your chair. The moves are simple. The first move is to strike a pose of any sort. The second move with your warm hands is to do your best Muhammad Ali punch. These are love punches. You punch the green dot. And then if you know the Temptations, which is the music we're going to hear, You know the verse to the song, I can't get next to you, babe. I can't get next to you. I know you know it. I know what generation I'm talking to here. You're going to take your fingers and you're going to point to the people in the Zoom room that you literally can't get next to because what the heck is this technology? Where are we in the world now? And we're going to do that dance over and over again. It's not a democracy. It's a benevolent dictatorship. Go music. And I'm going to back up my chair and lead us in a little chair dance with your support.
Hold it. Listen.
All right, get warm with me, people. We're going to strike a pose soon. Are you ready? Are we ready? Okay, here we go. Pose.
Can turn the gray sky blue. I can make it rain whenever I want it to.
Yeah, strike a pose. Get it.
I can make a ship sail on dry land.
March it out, march it out.
Isn't complete and I'm so blue. 'Cause I can't get next to you. Next to you, baby. Next to you. I just can't get next to you. Next to you, baby. I can't get next to you.
Pose.
You can fly like a bird in the sky. Oh, I can turn a river into a raging fire. I can live forever if I so desire. Can't get next to you, baby. I can't get next to you. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Your move. All right, find down. Are you dancing?
Turn back the hands of time. You I can make the seasons change just by waving my hand. Oh, I can change anything from all to do.
Come on, you know you want it.
To do the most I'm unable to do.
All right, last time, march it out.
With all the powers I possess. No sky, you're the key to my happiness. Can't get next to you. You're blowing my mind, 'cause I can't get next to you. Can't you see these tears I'm crying? I can't get next to you. Girl, it's you that I need. I gotta get next.
Do you want me to talk to you?
Yeah.
Can't get next to you.
I didn't get to watch.
Can't get next to you.
All right, smooth fade to the DJ. I really appreciate that. I think that's an unprecedented introduction, people. I'm telling you, what are we here for if we're not here for that? All right, they're going to play a 1-minute video and I'll be done talking just in case you need some context for what the heck that was. I've been in Durham 7 years, as I said. As an artist, for the past 25 years, I've been working in healthcare contexts, dancing with older adults. That dance you saw, I did not choreograph. It was invented by the dancers you're going to see very soon on this video from the Durham Center for Senior Life, where every Thursday I teach a seated dance class called Motown in Motion. And it's an adaptive dance class for older adults who get down. I mean, most of them are 80 years old, and I'm just the DJ, basically. So you'll see here a video that was shot by ABC 11 last fall. I've been doing this for about 3 years with them. And we do all kinds of numbers. I mean, here you'll see a lot of, let's see, Tina Turner. I think we have some Rolling on the River. You'll see all kinds of stretching and things like that. Contrary to what this little banner says, this is Alzheimer's and Music Therapy, the news reporter was labeling this. I'm not a dance therapist. I have no clinical training. I'm a practicing artist, and I work with certified nursing assistants who you see here. This is a, big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, rolling on a river, et cetera, et cetera. And we stay in our lane and work together on arts-based health and well-being programs. And we're trying to expand these throughout Durham County, particularly for older adults who are living with some form of cognitive decline. So I thought I would just do that and then tell you a little bit about it. And hopefully with Ken in our questions series, we can continue to say more. Does that sound good? That's plenty from me.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. So we were starting off, I think, very strongly in this session with seeing three different artistic approaches, and so I'm going to have fun, I think, talking to people today. So let's see. I believe Noor is first here, so I'm going to ask you, yeah, which came first, your interest in neurophysiology or your interest in dance?
Yeah, the interest in dance for sure
Mhm.
came first. And so, yeah, initially I was actually going to graduate school with the hope of studying biomechanics and like how the human body moves during the practice of dance. Unfortunately, um, that didn't work out, but there was a new lab that was looking at the neuroscience of dance. And so when I was coming into graduate school, I was just like, all right, how do we even look at what the human brain is doing while we're moving? And so I was introduced to this concept called electroencephalography, or EEG, which is this mobile cap that you can put on, and then you put metal sensors all over your scalp. Typically, you see this in a very clinical space, but because of the advancement of technology, you can actually apply it in a mobile setting, right? And so, with that being said, my research practice has actually moved a little bit beyond dance, and so in the Embodied Brain Lab, which is where I'm at Virginia Tech, we actually look at different mind-body movement practices. And so thankfully, we've been able to work with not only dancers, we've been able to work with a theater program over in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We've been able to work with stone carvers here in Southwest Virginia too. And so we're just developing this sort of holistic understanding of what the human body does, specifically within the brain, when we're involved in these sort of different artistic practices, including dance.
Oh, wow. So so you're studying a number of different kinds of human movements. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is interesting. Well, and speaking of those movements, like you gave us an example earlier of popping and animation, and I'm just going to ask what attracted you to those particular kind of dance? How did, was that always your interest, or is that something you discovered along the way?
It's something I discovered along the way. I mean, thankfully, when I was in the North Carolina area, I was exposed to a lot of different genres of dance. And so, I mean, I took a few ballet classes, took a few contemporary, modern, jazz, and I just realized my body is just so rigid. It was very hard for me to be a little bit free flowy doing a lot of different styles, but then I was introduced to popping and animation, which in and of itself, with the muscle flexions that you have to do, is a bit rigid, right? And so that's something that I kind of thrived in. And thankfully, too, I mean, there were a lot of practitioners within the Durham area, too, who were also teaching that throughout like local classes within the street community. And so it's something that I really picked up. And then when I was living in Japan, that's when I really started like practicing it a little bit further too. And so I was able to train under Gendai, which maybe some folks here know. If you watch America's Got Talent, he was actually competing this past season. So he's one of my closest mentors. He's trained extensively within the Los Angeles area. I've been able to take a few of those classes too. And so, yeah, it was kind of just like opportunities kind of lined up perfectly once I started developing that interest. And that's something that I just kind of dive deeper into once I got started.
I like the fact that you seem to be going with what you felt was the limitations of your body and discovering, what kind of dance you wanted to do. That's great.
Mhm.
Um, well, because you're somebody who, is in two worlds, the world of dance and the world of the body and body and the brain and biomechanics, right? What can we learn from looking at dancing and movement from those perspectives of like biomechanics, cognition, neurophysiology? Do you have any insights for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, the main reason why I got into this work is because personally, I mean, I briefly talked about this in my introduction from a social level, how I felt connected to others within the dance studio space, within the street dance space. But I mean, just mentally as well. I mean, it was a dance form that I was heavily engaged in during the peak of the pandemic, and I found a great benefit from it in regards to my mental health, right? And so when I came and starting my graduate education, I was just like, like there's got to be a way to look into this a little bit further, right? And so when we think about dance in and of itself, right, you're engaging various aspects of human cognition, right? I mean, at one point you may be engaging your memory, trying to memorize choreography, maybe you're creating choreography, right? So there's this aspect of learning and memory and the physical act of exercise and creativity that is integral to this dance experience, right? And so that's what we started to look into once I joined the lab, and I'm advised by Dr. Julia Basso in Virginia Tech. And so what we found is that a lot of these different mind-body movement practices, what we call them, on top of dance, we've seen like even getting involved in a short bout of dance, whether it's an online dance class, such as what Dr. Wilbur showed, right? Even just like us engaging in that sort of dance form, even those acute bouts of dance, our surveys and data have shown that they increase happiness, increase positive affect, and so the sense of like well-being. And also, like in some clinical populations too, what we've seen is that it decreases symptoms of depression and anxiety. And recently, we're about to submit this paper too. We've also seen an association with all that sense of positive socio-emotional health with increased brain activity in what we call a theta band. And so the theta band is a very slow brain oscillation, but we typically associate it with this sort of like rest and digest system that we have, right? The parasympathetic nervous system. And so when we were looking into that, we were like, all right, cool. So not only are we seeing this vast improvement in socio-emotional health when you're engaging in dance, but you're also seeing these sort of brain oscillations and brain patterns during dance that are also associated with this sort of relaxed state. So we're really looking at it from a wide variety of lenses.
All right, thank you. It's fascinating to me to be a fascinating thing to be studying. Um, I think we will turn now to Mike and talk a little about the work that you do as both the actor and the playwright. So how did you first come to this practice? How did you first get involved with acting and then with playwriting?
Well, really, it started when I was pretty young. There's this poem by illustrator and poet Shel Silverstein that opens his book Where the Sidewalk Ends. And that asks the reader of any age to remember a time when their minds were malleable and open to grandiose journeys of the imagination. You know, it says, if you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you are a pretender, come sit by my fire, for we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in. Now, I found that poem of Shel Silverstein not long after I had been persuaded by a sixth grade teacher in elementary school to portray Abraham Lincoln in our school play. I was completely new to the school, and I said no a number of times before I finally said yes. And there I stood on stage, dressed as Abraham Lincoln, beard and all, in our cafeteria. That was also our gymnasium. That was also our auditorium. So it was a Kappa gymatorium. And I said, and it's the first time I'd ever really stepped into the shoes, truly stepped into the shoes of a character with voice and posture. And I said, well, sir, the people of the North believe that there should not be any more slavery. Yet, because of economics and selfish reasons, the Southern states wanted slavery to continue to help them raise crops. And the whole school just cheered. They'd really never seen anything like that. And my mama, as mamas like to do, sat in the front row and she shouted, "That's my baby." And from that day forward, this is what I wanted to do. Now, my mother sits in the back row now, but this is what I truly wanted to do with my life. And maybe that teacher saw that I was a dreamer, but in a sense, we're all dreamers in some way. It's just that most of us stop expressing those dreams, at least artistically, after sixth grade. Why? Well, I think there are many reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons is that someone convinces us that all of that dreaming, all of that outward expression of imagination is somehow silly. And sadly, most folks believe that.
Well, thank you for that thought. Yes. Well, let me. So you, as well as being an actor, you are someone who creates plays very well and greatly admired plays. And can you tell us something about, you use drama as a way of exploring themes of social justice around Black history. How does that affect the way you approach drama? What effect do you want your plays to have on your audience?
I would say in my research and in my performances, I have to find and explore multiple perspectives. Even if I don't agree personally or philosophically with a character's beliefs, I must understand their truth. If I'm to portray them truthfully, I have to understand what they believe, why they believe it. Often in my plays, I portray white Southern men, and I have to understand not only the history of the time, but what is going on in that particular nuanced history that might ask or push an individual, a white male Southerner, to do some of the things that Bull Connor did, to do the things that the men that killed Emmett Till to do, and what I can't do and what I strive to run away from, and that is the Franken Southerner, right? And we've seen the Franken Southerner in Hollywood films more often than not, and that is the Southerner that all but has big bolts on the sides of their neck, and they talk like this, and they're just a caricature of who they really are or what those individuals truly are, and nobody believes that. And the importance to having someone portray a believable villain or a believable antagonist is because we want to be a mirror to society. We want people to see themselves or see their relatives or see their aunts, uncles, or closest loved ones in those characters. And if they are not true or truthful, then they don't. And then where can the change happen?
So, yeah, that's fascinating. So, playwriting is in some ways requires a certain amount of empathy, a certain amount of awareness of who people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you're trying to create a situation in which the audience is coming to perhaps learn something about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think of my audiences as the same of my students, right? I'm not trying to tell them what to think. I'm simply going to ask them to think, right? Um, they may want to learn more about a particular subject or event or individual, or maybe they'll walk away inspired to act, not just to learn more about that particular individual or event, but to actually act, to do something, to be the John Lewis that wants to start some good trouble, to be the freedom rider that wants to create or push the beloved community. That's what I am aspiring to do in my work.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mike. That gives us a lot to think about. Sarah, I'd like to turn to you now too. And we have such a richness of presentations going on here. How did you first come to your practice of dance?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo an avenue that echoes what Mike was talking about. I don't think it was a conscious decision to
Mhm.
start to really dance around. I mean, I don't have a rational memory of like deciding I will dance. You got to imagine I'm a child of the 70s, record albums, Donna Summer, Jackson 5, moving to the music felt good and felt right. So, I'm part of the MTV generation. We used to put VHS tapes in and then tape the Janet Jackson concert, and we'd all learn all the moves. I feel like it took actually returning to academia, like when I was in my late 30s and studying dance history a little bit more to realize a couple things. One was that dancing for me early on, I know now, was a response to conditions in my life at a very early age that made me feel very small and actually made me feel very deauthorized at the level of my own body. So, what I can say now is that, I'm moving, dancing, sweating, discovering, listening to what the information is that my body is giving me about myself all the time. The privilege to do that is what dancing is. It's a privilege to listen this way and to connect to myself and my values. And it's also this amazing way to learn about people who are with me in ways you would never know them otherwise if you move with them, which is sort of why my invitation was, let's just know each other differently on this Zoom right now and punch it out and pose and like see what changes. And we probably won't have time to hear from everyone, but I would love to hear about that. So nowadays, I feel like the Secretary of State of dance in a certain way because I know so many people who love dancing in different cultural traditions, in different contexts. The 35 older adults I dance with at DCSL, they dance. They don't need me to dance. They love to dance. I set up the conditions for them to get their life. And I tell them, you can do what I do, you can do your own moves, or you can sit back and watch the show. But either way, people dance forever, but not all artists can work in dance forever. So a lot of my scholarship now is asking the question, if healthcare needs dance to redistribute care in non-biomedical, non-pharmacological ways that honestly have an economic impact on saving money for the health institutions. If artists are being invited in to work with healthcare professionals, can we at the same time say, yes, artists need stable wages, strong employment contracts, their economic well-being should be part of that picture. So my scholarship is a bit more of my activism for why we need artists in those worlds and also need them to have parity of status with clinical and scientific researchers as well, because they have very different wisdom and expertise. As Mike's example shows, artists do not see the world the way it is. They see the world as how it could be. They dream. And I feel like the most powerful case I make all the time about why we need to keep resourcing artists and with robust resources is, the best artists that I know and love help us take responsibility for our own creativity. The same way a great clinician might make you take responsibility for your own health and well-being, right? It's a facilitation skill. It's a type of mastery of facilitating a connection. And that's sort of hard to talk about, but I really think like it's just not trivial right now in this world that we're living in. So just, thank you for asking that question. Just to say, writing about dance, dancing, help facilitating dance, these are all very intertwined practices for me for different reasons.
Very interesting. And what I think we like to think that the arts are somehow outside the economy, that they're they somehow just are going to take care of themselves. But it really, like anything else that we humans do, it requires funding. It requires supporting people in their efforts to do things. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I like to say, it's a contradictory thing trying to work in the arts because many artists perform that work for reasons that are not exclusively monetary, right? So you get all kinds of other values. This is a bit what Nora's talking about, the social values, the spiritual values, all of the stuff that you get from doing the artwork is not strictly economic, but that doesn't actually mean to me that artists should be exploited economically. Actually, we need to pay artists. So can't it be both and, right? And that's a little bit of you're getting me on my soapbox now. I'll step off, but yeah.
Well, thank you for that, though. I think that was a really good reminder of the importance of those things. Well, what I'd like to do now is we have a sort of general question that I'm going to throw out to everybody, and we'll just see where, and it's kind of like we've heard all these rich presentations, all these interesting practices people are doing. And so Just can you talk a little bit about how the arts, whether dance or drama or something else, how do they enhance our lives? What can they tell us about being human, about what it means to be human? Any ideas on that? This is to everybody.
Um, I would say that for me, a dear friend once told me that he was drawn to my work because of my commitment to silliness. And that was nearly 30 years ago, and his words still echo in my work. And I know many of you thinking silliness. Your work is so serious. Well, the subjects that I write about and perform are serious. However, I never take myself too seriously. And that's why everyone should take a moment to embrace silliness well, as it comes, um, or at least try to once a day, whether it's moving your legs and limbs around, simply freeing your body to do whatever it wants to do without editing, without self-correction, simply freeing your thoughts through writing, or your wishes, or your hopes, or your dreams, without editing or self-judgment. I think these are a number of ways or outlets to free ourselves from the bondage of concern about onlookers, or whatever it might be that is trapping us in going in circles. I think that by stepping away from all of that self-editing, from that reflection that keeps us from moving forward, is the way we do that is through saying, I'm just going to be silly. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to improvise, or let this happen organically in me, and let's just see where it goes, and commit that to a practice, right? Doing it every day in the way that some people will meditate, and it becomes medicinal.
Thank you. Yeah. Other ideas? Any about seeing any patterns in what we've been doing here today? Or...
I appreciate that comment so much. Yeah, I was just smiling and nodding the entire time because I remember, well, and let me just backtrack a little bit too. I mean, we are living in a day and age where everything is pretty much virtual, right? And I think maybe many people here in the audience feel the same way. It's like we have our personal brand, right? And we kind of want to like be sure that we are presenting like the quote unquote best version of ourselves on the internet. And I think at a certain extent, right? I mean, you start questioning your identity and start feeling like you can't really be yourself, right? And so I remember like when I mean, because in my, at least like my generation, like we've always been on social media, right? I mean, that's been like a big thing. I mean, like growing up with like all the different social media platforms. But when I initially got engaged with dance, like primarily within college, like that was one of the few spaces where I felt like I can genuinely just be myself. And and one of the biggest things within street dance, within hip hop culture is the cipher, right? And so usually like you'll go into like this like group setting, you'll have like a bunch of people kind of like circling around you, and one by one people will go into the middle and start dancing. You'll start like engaging with each other, and no one's there to judge you. You are there to just dance, engage with that community. This goes back to the whole like sense of just like building community and dance benefiting you in a social sense. And that's beautiful, right? And for anyone who's not familiar with the cipher, I highly encourage you all to like check it out. Like that's one of the main ways where I just felt like one, like I felt a sense of belonging, and two, I felt like I can really be myself, right? Even just like being a not like even just like people who dance at all different levels, right? No one's really there to judge you. I think really just like engaging in dance just helped me be more comfortable with who I am be more comfortable expressing myself, right? And I think a lot of these different creativity practices can help with that.
Can I just request that we have a dance battle on the next one of these? I mean, we could just like have a Zoom dance battle with all of the I'd be so down for that. I don't know if it's my place to actually make that demand, but making a cipher out of the Zoom is like you are speaking my language, Nora, right there. I just have one quick thing to add, and that's just I say this to my students at Duke all the time, the undergrads in particular, that well, art shows you what your opinion is, right? So, you see something and you feel feelings, right? You feel connection, you could feel discomfort, all that bodily weather that you're experiencing all the time is stirred when you're in apprehension of some sort of work of art. And I can really broadly define that. But here's what the problem is, I think sometimes the university still has not caught up with the best ways to credit our emotional intelligence, right? So I sit and think about this a lot because again, the weather of your emotions is your body telling you, giving you information about yourself, what you love, what you care about, what you're mad about, right? And I think in this moment, if we're going to keep like pushing forward in this high performance way where we have very high performing faculty and students doing very highly skilled things, and we don't know what it's like to sit with contradictions that Mike writes about in plays, to sit with really uncomfortable truths and to go ahead and process and move through that emotional weather. That is the work that artists are doing to help people reconnect to their embodied selves, their embodied humanity, right? So often I'm like, this sounds like a dance studies class. I'm going to get my research and writing thing, but you're going to feel your feelings in here. You're going to write from the place of that bodily information and try and find what you're fighting for, what your values are in the world, right? So I really do think it's definitely not trivial, and dance can sometimes be dismissed as mere entertainment, as something very trivial, very infantile, very frivolous, very anti-intellectual. But honestly, I lean into the emotional side of dance because that is a form, in my mind, of intelligence and information. So just to say out loud, thank you again for dancing with me. I know you didn't have a choice, but for those of you who came off camera, thanks for being brave.
That's wonderful. I just love all of these deeply held perspectives on how the arts enrich our lives, how important it is, to as humans that we have these forms of self-expression to live more fully. That's beautiful. And now is the time when we turn to questions from the room. And so far, there's a lot of comments, very positive compliments, and a lot of positive statements about this. But I'm not seeing a lot of questions per se yet. But I can say that people were very positive about the dancing, yeah, and people are just saying the presenters in this session are amazing. But if you have any questions, audience, now is the time. We've got these 3 people here, and we might as well take advantage of that situation. Someone says, you recommend a daily practice for silliness?
Absolutely. Silliness a day keeps the doctor away. Don't quote me on that, but I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
Well, we do know. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Just really quickly, I'm thinking about this all the time when I walk around past an elementary school and you see, young people who are 4 years old, 5 years old, who are doing these really intricate games. They're playing, they're tagging, they're doing these things that I think Mike mentioned we unlearn or we deprogram about our everyday life. So, I don't know. I recommend like jazz hands, like just use it as a punctuation mark in regular everyday communication, to your coworkers. If you really want to use an exclamation point, I'm being silly saying that. But honestly, I don't always feel like I want to dance. I'm ready to dance. But if I do a little movement, I actually I actually get energy from moving. Isn't that funny? Like human adults can talk themselves out of being in movement. So, even if it's just shaking it out, get up from your desk, turn on the Temptations, whatever gives you your life. Again, eyes closed, whatever it takes. I actually think our bodies are more ready than our minds or our psychology is for some of this stuff. So.
Nice. We are getting a couple of questions now. Do you have any targeted teaching for middle schoolers who are afraid of being not cool?
I will say that in my work, I perform for a lot of middle schoolers. I also present workshops and residencies for middle schoolers that combine theater with English language arts as well as history. So it's just kind of become a combination of all of it. But I find mostly in my performances, because I utilize a high degree of audience participation in my work, asking students to come on stage or volunteering them to come up on stage to portray a particular individual in history that they probably will never be asked to portray. So it's a really neat thing. But what I do is in those instances is I infuse humor, right? I find a way, and usually it comes out of some improvisational moment, but I find a way to infuse a little bit of humor in all of the work that I do, or a lot of humor in the work that I do, because and this is key. I believe that um, that laughter is intravenous. That is, we can find ourselves laughing without even realizing it. We guffaw at something and we cover our mouths. Music can be the exact same way. We are tapping our foot before we realize that we are doing it. And with humor, I look at that as the flavor in the medicine. The work that I do is in many ways hard medicine to take, but it's medicine that we need. And by flavoring that medicine with humor, it's easier to go down. It opens people up from the very beginning, and I'm able to pour that medicine inside. And people that came or walked into the theater thinking that they were going to be angry or depressed by the end of a performance walk out smiling, because my greatest desire is for them to walk out hopeful.
Mm. All right, thank you. We have another question here. Well, we had a statement, would love to hear more about sample practices that we might use to access our own creativity and silliness. Any quick ideas about some practices?
I guess I'll just say one quick thing, which is like another thing that I root for artists about is they just ask us to pay attention differently, right, to the world that is around us. So it may feel like silliness means like reaching the edges of what feels normative or everyday about life. So I studied clowning for a lot of years. I don't know if Mike has done so as well, but the clowns are a very physical art form. And for the clown, on a scale of 1 to 10, there is no art in neutral, everyone, just so you know. The artfulness of being silly and hilarious is 0 to 2 on a scale of 10, or 8 to 9 million. But there is no art in the everyday. So just to say out loud, like just to ask yourself, like, on some level, can I pay attention differently? What are the extremes of what I'm feeling right here? What are the extremes of what I'm trying to say? And also listening, just listening to the absurdity that's around us and looking for that person who you can eye roll that situation with. I mean, that's a lot of absurdity in the world right now. So give yourself permission to connect instead of close your eyes to this. I think this is the worst part of what's going on right now. So I don't know we'll have to do a clown workshop. We'll have to do a dance cipher and a clown workshop. We've got a list of forever learning demands, Kent, that are happening here. I'm just going to take those as demands and have
We'll have to pass those along to Letitia. Yeah, and let's see, we have a lot more quick. Oh, here's a question from Vicky. How do we make the performing arts not be considered bourgeois? I guess it seems she's getting at something there about how we tend to think about the arts. Is there ways we can make them more everyday, more a part of uh, everyday person's life, normal life.
I think we fight to keep them in the public school classrooms.
Yeah.
More and more, we see across the country that the arts are the first and the easiest to cut when it comes to budgetary expenses, and if the students are not given the opportunity to see, feel, or even appreciate the arts, they grow into adults that don't see, feel, or appreciate the arts. I know that is an obvious statement, but it is still a statement that needs saying and echoing and repeating over and over
Mm.
again. It seems that sometimes people forget that um, we cannot walk out of our homes or into our homes without the arts affecting us in some way. Those photos that you have on your wall, the artwork, the music that you hear as you're walking through the grocery store, as you're driving in your car, those are all art forms. And if we continue to make the connection between those everyday art forms and those art forms that are perceived as being bourgeois or bougie, then we are able to clearly break down the walls that people have built up between um, the everyday arts and those arts that might seem unapproachable, but really and truly are actually approachable if given the proper time and the proper budgetary expenses at the youngest ages.
Thank you, Mike. And you know what? I'm afraid we are at the end of our time today. That went by very fast. And I would love to hear each of you go on for another hour or two, but I'm afraid this particular session is over right now. So I will turn things back over to Letitia.
Thank you so much, Sarah, Noor, Mike, and Kent, for such a heartwarming and authentic presentation and discussion today, and to our audience for joining us. Today's session was recorded and will be posted to the Duke Alumni Lifelong Learning YouTube channel. Thank you.